Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 271, I chat with Robert Heron about various items of interest to home theater geeks everywhere. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for home theater geeks is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded September 3rd, 2015. Episode 271. News of the Day with Robert Heron. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by ProXPN. ProXPN is a virtual private network that allows you to use the internet the way it should be, anonymously and without oversight. Save 50% off a 12-month subscription. Go to proxpn.com/twit and use the code HTG50 at checkout. And by the new Epson Workforce printers powered by Precision Core. Workforce is an award-winning line of all-in-one printers for your home office, small to large business, or corporate work groups. Visit Epson.com to find out more. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the home theater geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week's guest geek is Robert Heron, a technologist and AV aficionado and expert par excellence, and one of the most popular guests here on Home Theater Geeks. Hey, Robert, welcome back.
Thank you, Scott. What a nice introduction. It's always good to be here, too.
Well, it's always great to have you here, and it's not just my opinion, but a lot of people in the chat room and elsewhere say that they really love your appearances here, as I do, so we're going to have a good time today.
My podcast catcher has both the MP3 version of your show and the HD video version, so depending if I'm laying in bed, about to go to sleep, or if I'm actually up and about and I can actually watch the video. Either way, it's you have awesome guests. People I'm so interested in hearing what they're up to. So,
well, that's the whole point of the show, exactly. And you're one of those people who people really are interested in hearing from. So I thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with everybody.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
So those of you who are tuned in live at live.twit.tv, or logged into the chat room there, or at irc.twit.tv, can post questions for us as we go, and I'll pass along as many as I can. I know, Robert, you're watching the chat room as well. My screen name is Scott Wilkinson, my full name, no dots or dashes. Yours, Robert, is Robert_Heron. And if you put the name of either of us in your message, then it'll show up in a different color on our screen and we'll see it easier. And that'll make it easier for us to find those questions. And that's part of what I want to do today is, just answer some chat room questions. Basically, I'd like, Robert, for you and I to sort of chit-chat about the news of the day. And there's plenty of it, isn't there?
You aren't kidding. With certain trade shows going on right now in Europe, it is kind of a good preview time for what we're expecting to see coming up in a couple of months in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. So,
right. Can you believe that's already almost here already?
No, yeah, actually I can. Once you realize that the registration, you should already be registered if you're going to go, and you should probably have a hotel room at this point and airfare. Question. Otherwise, you're going to be paying through the nose, without a doubt.
Exactly right. That's exactly.
But this is a good time, though, to preview what's going to be there and to get an idea of where the battle lines are drawn for, who's going to one up each other and how and why, or what technologies are going to be the key players, I think, for this year's show. Besides that, IFA is just, if you're into display systems or home theater gear in general, it's a terrific event to pay attention to.
The IFA or IFA is International Radio Show. That's how it translates. The German, I can't remember. But it's happening in Berlin as we speak. Well, probably not as we speak. Probably people are out partying right at the moment as we speak. But they are showing all the latest and greatest stuff. It's kind of a Europe-centric show, but as you say, it gives us all a preview of what we might expect at CES in January. One of the big announcements from IFA was Panasonic has gotten into the OLED Ultra HD TV game, making LG not the only kid on the block anymore, which is pretty exciting, don't you think?
I do, although I will say that if Panasonic does one thing really well, it's their focus on perfecting image quality with any display technology that they work with. They did an amazing job with their plasma screens, and even their LCDs have been highly regarded. And seeing them move into something that literally is a good plasma replacement, like the next gen of that video file style display system, that encourages me a lot. And I'm glad to see there is yet another option out there. I will say, though, I had people reporting to me that the panels that they're using in the Panasonic OLEDs are actually LG panels. So I'd like to get confirmation on that one way or another. These people seemed very certain of that fact. So I have not confirmed that for myself, but that is something I'd like to find out. But
and
regardless,
I bet you that's going to be difficult to confirm, because I'll bet neither of the companies are going to, really readily reveal that. Now, I reported last year even, that LG, there was a rumor that LG Display, which is separate from LG Electronics, the company that actually sells TVs, that LG Display, which makes raw panels, was in talks with Panasonic to supply them with OLED panels. And so it seems a good bet to assume that that's what's happening. But man, oh man, you go to a PR place and you say, "Where do you get your panels from?" Some company, they won't tell you.
No, I would like to bring my jeweler's loop with me, though, as soon as I can see one of those Panasonic OLEDs in person, to see if it has that RGBW. If it has the white subpixel, that would lend a little more credence, I think, to it being an LG panel. But regardless, as long as that picture performance is there, and if they can step up above everyone else and create imagery that really highlights the power of organic light emitting diode technology, I could care less where that panel comes from. It's just something I want to see out in the marketplace, and I want to have more options at better pricing.
Exactly. We have a picture of the Panasonic OLED from IFA. Just want to show people it's the CZ950. There it is. Some people are kind of complaining about the stand. I personally don't care about the stand or much about the industrial design, so to speak. But the big news here in terms of the industrial design is that this TV is curved. As virtually all, not all actually, now there's some other news to talk about in a bit, but most of the LG OLEDs are curved. Certainly most of the Samsung LED LCD TVs are curved. And this new Panasonic one is too. And maybe that lends credence to the idea that it ultimately came from LG.
Good, very well. Curved TVs, the design one way or the other, whether you prefer it curved or flat, there's no technical advantage to having a curved TV. I think aesthetically, it's a little more pleasing to look at, especially when it's off. But you're looking at generally you're not looking at TVs when they're turned off. So in that case, I find if you can spend a little time with a curved TV, you soon completely forget that the screen itself is actually curved.
I've heard other people say that. I've heard other people say that.
If you're in an extreme angle, you're going to notice the curve of the screen, no doubt. But I also, personally, I prefer how light in the room reflects off of a curved screen compared to a flat screen, especially with contrast enhancing. With the contrast enhancing screen surfaces, usually it's a glossy type finish that's liquid black as far as the backplane goes, or the panel itself. So when you have that almost mirror-like condition, especially if both screens are equal and one's flat and one's curved, I will look toward the curved one first, especially if I'm dealing with room light reflections, just because of the way it distorts the light. It stretches it more in the horizontal plane, and compared to
that's kind of one. That's one thing I noticed and objected more to was if you have a point source like a lamp or something that's just a small piece of light on a flat screen, it's a small piece of light, and that's annoying enough. But on a curved screen, it kind of spreads out into a line across the whole screen, which is more distracting to me. But that's just me.
That's true. No, it's like that is the other thing too. It is very much a personal opinion about
it is. It is.
But I was going to say, but just realize that in most cases, there's no technical advantage to the screen being curved, other than certain manufacturers will their very best TVs for the year will happen to be curved screens. Their flat screens may be a step down in terms of the technology behind it, or the absolute performance of it. But all things being equal, the curve by itself doesn't impart any significant advantage, at least in the screen sizes we're talking about.
Yeah, and we're talking about 55, 65. I think the one that Panasonic showed at IFA was 65-inch. And my feeling about it is that if you're one person sitting directly in front of the screen and you got this curved screen, there might actually be some benefit to it in terms of immersion and sight lines and field of vision and so on. But if you've got more than one person, maybe two sitting in the middle, as you say, if you're kind of far off axis, then it does start to look a little weird. Isn't this weird that LCD TVs have off-axis problems because of the nature of LCD? Colors wash out, contrast goes to hell. With OLED, you don't have that problem. But if you go off-axis with a curved screen, you have other problems. So it's again, kind of an off-axis thing, huh?
It's very, very true. And that's another advantage for a TV that can do full array local dimming. In the case of OLED, every pixel can completely turn off and become pure black. And on LCDs that feature a full array local dimming system, like Samsung's best right now, their GS9500, it has a grid of LEDs behind the screen that can be individually modulated to produce very dark black levels in scenes that need it or require it. That I find having that ability to shut the light off, be it an OLED or a full array local dimming system, when you get off axis a little bit, it helps mitigate some of that. With LCDs, generally you start losing contrast and color saturation as you move off axis. And having that full array system, at least it allows it then to darken parts of the screen so that it still maintains a pretty good looking picture quality. Not nearly as much as I feel as OLED does off axis, generally speaking.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It does improve it though. Yeah.
But so, I can't wait till we all own, or I can't wait till OLEDs really hit that price point where they just become almost the de facto and take over the world. But who knows? By the time that happens, there may be something even better down there.
I was talking to somebody recently about they had delayed buying a projector for their home theater for like a couple of years, and then when they came in, they said, "Oh, look, I can get a better projector for less money." And I said, well, yeah, but you can always, that's always going to be true. You can always say the next thing coming up is going to be better and probably maybe less expensive, but then you never buy anything. You never enjoy what you might have, and at some point you got to pull the trigger, right?
Without a doubt. I mean, stick to your budget. Don't put yourself in a hole over a piece of technology. But at the same point, you can't be looking a couple of years down the road to make a decision like that. Not with TVs or home electronics in general. Maybe your audio system, but even that's changing a lot right now with 3D audio formats and other things like that. But the general core thing for a general good surround sound experience or general 1080p or even now 4K viewing experience, it's not a bad time to jump in. Although I will say if you're looking at 4K and the other benefits of it, like high dynamic range and expanded color palettes, those are in their infancy. So it's really hard to buy that right now, expecting it to last or to be the same in the years coming up, because it's all so new and everything's still kind of being worked out. But as far as HD viewing experiences, just jump in with something you're happy with. It doesn't even really matter on the resolution, be it 1080p or 4K. At certain screen sizes, it seems like everything's going UHD resolution, 2160p. So at some point, you're just not even going to have a choice above a certain screen size. It's all going to be higher resolution than we have currently with 1080p screens, at least.
Yeah, yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, people tell me, what should I buy 4K or not now? And I generally say exactly that. 4K, the pixel density is all set. That's done. It's cast in stone. But high dynamic range, wide color gamut, so on, are not quite yet. And so if you can wait, it's maybe better to do so. On the other hand, as you say, if you need a TV now and it needs to be above a certain screen size, you're probably going to get 4K or UHD resolution, which is fine. I mean, particularly now with things like, you've looked at the 2015 Vizio M series, haven't you?
Just at Costco. I haven't had one in hand yet, and the reviews on that have been spectacular for the value.
Oh yeah,
the color rendering quality. There's some signal processing stuff that Vizio does that I wish they would stop, but you can't deny the value for full array local dimming LCD technology. Some of their panels, they use a mix of vertically aligned and in-plane switching panels. So depending on which series you're in, I want to say that most of the M series are all VA panels. for enhanced contrast. But they are just coming on with great value, well-targeted products. I think they don't try to cover every stupid base. They have like a series for everyone in terms of what you're looking for. And they have their now recently announced, or I guess it's been a couple of years now, but more announcements of late of their new reference series that will be their high dynamic range TV with
exactly. And that's been coming for a couple of years, and we're not, it's kind of like, well, is it ever going to actually show up? Later this month, the end of September, actually, there's a show called the Luxury Technology Show in LA, and Vizio might very well be there with the reference series. I don't know that. I'm just speculating. But there is going to be a 4K UHD zone at this show, and Panasonic, I think, and Samsung and some others are going to be there showing their latest and greatest. So that's going to be kind of interesting. Muchacho in the chat room is asking, what's your opinion of Changhong? This is one of these Chinese manufacturers that recently appeared at CES a year or two ago, started taking huge booths. I mean, another one is Hisense. We're going to talk about Hisense a little later. TCL is another one. And Hisense took over the Microsoft booth at CES. That's how big it is. Have you ever seen? It was pretty awesome, and they really decorated it up beautifully. They had a wonderful floor show.
That's cool.
Do you know anything about Changhong? I don't. I've heard a lot about Hisense and TCL, but
I walked through their booth at CES, and they seem to have a value version of every TV, every expensive premium thing I saw as far as display technology goes. They had a short throw laser projector that they were showing off. They compared that to like Sony's $50,000 beautiful short throw laser, 4K. They also had some large format displays. I want to say that they were also experimenting with 3M's quantum dot materials for their enhancement filters for expanding color palettes, which I think everybody who makes an LCD at this point is experimenting with that because of it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to implement it, and it gives you a good checkbox thing to say, okay, we're there already. So but I walked through their booth. There was a lot. They were right near where Intel was, so it was a good excuse to go back and forth between those two companies. But
exactly,
I didn't see anything that other than that 4K short throw laser, which I was just interested in anyway. But they seem to have lots of great products, but I have yet to personally test one out and see how it compares for the money. But
it's interesting. I mean, you've probably heard this before. It used to be that the U.S. was the place where the best TVs were made. Then it was Japan. Now it's Korea, and it's I think soon to be China. Maybe not the best TVs, but certainly they're going to be more and more important in the TV market. My big question, and that I've continued to ponder, and I have no answer to, is where next? Where after China? China, as we know, is having some economic difficulties now. They've devalued their currency. Their economy is a little shaky, it seems, at the moment. So the question is, where next? And I don't know. India, Africa?
Well, most of the TVs in North America, at least for Samsung and I want to say LG and others, they assemble them in Mexico because it's
true enough.
The shipping cost is cheaper.
Right.
I imagine the core components are manufactured still in the home countries, but the assembly actually takes place here. So in a sense that I could say my TV was made just south of the border, shipped north, and here it is. But as far as electronics manufacturing goes, I'm seeing a lot of traction in Vietnam. I don't know about TV display systems, but it'll be interesting to see if any of that actually, if it actually moves around beyond the home base of these countries. Like you have the Taiwanese and the Chinese manufacturers who are huge. I mean, they supply they supply panels to other manufacturers that are trying to fill out certain sizes maybe that they're missing. Oh, we built a 60 and a 70, but we didn't do the 65 the way we wanted. Let's order up a panel from this company with our specs and make it work as such. And I see that a lot. There's always, it seems, always one TV within a size range, within a particular series, especially if it's a series of TVs that offers extreme size differences. Like, oh, we have it from 24 inches to 80 inches. In there somewhere is generally at least one Chinese or Taiwanese panel in the mix. And sometimes they offer comparable performance compared to the other models within that series as well. So I don't immediately discount it. TV manufacturing is all about, what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And they're all looking to save money and everywhere they can. But at the same point, without a doubt. But at the same point, if they all have good engineers, they all know what the standards are. At least at some level, they can then say, here, our movie mode or our output with this particular preset is going to be factory calibrated to, the great standards, or we're going to do some optimization to make sure our video processing is doing everything correctly. And for those features, I think the brand name becomes less significant. It's more about like service and support. How long does the damn thing last? Does it have a wobbly stand if you're going to use the stand? Which, by the way, wall mount your TVs. Stop using the stands. That's so annoying. If you can, I always mount every display I own if I can possibly do it. So
really, just not too high, not over the fireplace, please.
No, that I'm sick of. But for safety concerns, been doing that a lot recently with new parents with big screen TVs. Yeah, just helping them finding a good mount and putting it up. But
sure, for if you have a kid, if you have like a toddler around the house or whatever, you do not want a TV on a stand that they could tip over.
That or 2-year-olds love to pull on cords. I don't know what it is. They see a cord.
What is it about those 2-year-olds?
Just gotta run over there, just pull on that. And, besides that, it's just something. I really want to test more of these so-called off brands, Hisense in particular, because they're going to be taking over the Sharp brand name coming up next year.
Yes, isn't that something?
I hear nothing but pretty good reviews and solid performance and value out of their line. And if they can bring that with a better known name with the Sharp branding, I'm all for it. I'd like to see what their 4K, what their ultra LED TVs are. I think it's ULED. I think they're calling it.
ULED is what they call it.
But they're working with quantum dot technologies as well to implement a wider color gamut. They already have 4K resolution. I'm sure they've got high dynamic range. And if they can bring these products to market, either under their own name or under the Sharp brand name, I really want to get them in and check them out because they're talking about price points that are more affordable for more people. So
yes,
that's really what I want to see. And
granted, in fact, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know many manufacturers who are claiming to make great amounts of money from the TV part of their business.
No. The margins are razor thin on virtually all of them.
That's it, exactly. And unless you're a company like Samsung or an LG that also has a mobile division that's extremely profitable, it's interesting that, it isn't like it used to be with back in the day, it was price fixing that got everyone the profits they were doing. But nowadays, it's just every little thing that they can take out of a TV and just focus on the core components or the core things that make it important is where they're all shooting for. Hence, that's really why that's why Vizio ended up going down the route they did a couple of years back, saying, you know what, we're going to lose 3D. We're going to go with full array local dimming in an affordable way. Maybe not as many zones as other people offer.
Certainly not as many zones.
No, not even close. But just to have those things on the feature list, it just shows that it's like, you know what, if we have to scale back in order to, make it a more cost-effective product, at least we're getting rid of things, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, in terms of here are the things that people don't use as much as other things. And we can then simplify the design, focus more on the things that are important, either to the reviewers like myself and you, or get the cost down to where more people can buy it and afford it.
Yeah. Well, we got tons more to talk about, but if you'll excuse me for just a moment, I'd like to thank one of our sponsors for this episode, which is ProXPN. Now, ProXPN is a global VPN, or virtual private network, that works with almost any internet connection. It creates a secure, encrypted tunnel through which all of your online data passes back and forth. Any online application can work with ProXPN, including your web browser, email, file sharing, and instant messaging programs. ProXPN keeps everything you do online hidden from prying eyes. How important is that? Disguising your physical location and giving you unfettered access to any website or online service, no matter where you live or travel to. Dig this, they do zero logging. Unlike other VPNs, ProXPN keeps no record of your online activity. And you get complete privacy through a 512-bit encryption tunnel and a 2048-bit encryption key. It works via OpenVPN or PPTP. You get to choose. And there's no IPv6 traffic leakage or DNS hijacking. ProXPN is fully protected and up to date. Protect yourself against your ISP's 6 strikes rule, monitoring and throttling, and bypass internet filtering and blocked websites. You can also bypass geographical restrictions for internet content and online video with worldwide servers in the US, UK, Asia, and more. Now with more servers and improved speeds. ProXPN's software for Windows and Mac offers advanced controls. You can select ports, connect at startup, and even select which programs should be shut down if your anonymous connection is ever interrupted. ProXPN also works with your iOS or Android device, allowing you to use your data plan or public or corporate Wi-Fi with complete and total privacy on the go. Hey, Steve Gibson gave it a great review on Security Now right here at Twit, and he knows his stuff, believe me. So go to proxpn.com/twit for more information and to sign up. ProXPN premium accounts, normally $9.98 a month, but we've got a special offer. If you use the code HTG50 at checkout, you'll receive 50% off the monthly price when you sign up for a 12-month subscription. That's less than $5 a month when you sign up for a year, and it's good for the lifetime of your account. If you're not satisfied, you can cancel within 7 days for a full refund. So go to proxpn.com/twit and sign up with the code HTG50. ProXPN accepts payment through Visa, PayPal, even Bitcoin. So check it out. And we thank ProXPN very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. So speaking of home theater geeks, I got one of the best home theater geeks in the world with me today, Robert Heron, technologist and host of his own site, heronfidelity.com. We've been talking about OLED and curved screens. I just wanted to make sure we mentioned the LG announcement. I'm not sure if it was from IFA, but they recently announced their flat OLED. They've been all about curve, as Samsung has, and I kind of thought it was more of a Korean thing. But now Panasonic has announced a curved one, as we talked about earlier, probably sourced from LG, but that's only speculation. But the EF9500 is the answer to many of those of us on AVS Forum who don't like curved screens. LG finally announced a flat version, the EF9500, which we actually have a picture of to show you if we can pull that up. It's just a matter of a flat screen as opposed to a curved screen, still 4K, a UHD, high dynamic range capability.
Nice.
And, you know, it's going to be great. I can't wait to see it. Not sure when it's going to be in the stores, but hopefully soon, and hopefully we can get one to review. I hope you can get one to review. And, you know, that, to me, I personally don't like curved screens very much, although I have heard plenty of people say, I didn't think I'd like it, but then I lived with it for a while, just as you said earlier. And I lived with it for a while, and I got used to it totally, and now I don't even notice it. And flat screens, in fact, look weird and distorted. How about that? I've actually seen that comment.
It's
it's amazing.
Also, too, when you're slightly off axis, I still think a curved screen does a good job. It's like after even an hour of viewing where I'm switching back and forth between a flat screen versus a curved screen. In a darkened environment, I notice it even less. And even when the lights are on, as long as I'm not way off to the side where the shape of the screen itself becomes really obvious, I don't notice it that much. And other than that, we were talking about in terms of just how reflections are handled, whether or not you prefer that more of a funhouse look. But I find in some cases it actually helps, I think, mitigate strong room light reflections, at least for overall like sunlight coming in the room and reflecting off, say, the floor to the screen and things like that. But with the two new announcements, or the two most recent flat panels, OLED flat panels from LG, they had that EF9500 and the EG9600. Both of those are going to be supporting high dynamic range, like you mentioned. And they also announced for LG, they now have the streaming capability. If it's not today or tomorrow or already, but if you're an Amazon subscription member, Prime member, you then have access to their high dynamic range content, which currently was Used to be a show called Mozart in the Jungle, the first season, and a preview or a single episode of another show coming up. But they just added, I guess, Transparent as well for yet more HDR enhanced content.
Oh, man,
And
that is so great.
I can't wait to see that on OLED because to this day, at least with the initial launch of that service from Amazon, it was exclusive to Samsung TVs for a while there, at least on its initial launch. Now that it's over onto an OLED screen, I'd like to do some side-by-side comparisons running that streaming content, 4K, ultra high definition with high dynamic range, and decent bit rates. It's some of the best looking video I've seen from any source. If you have the bandwidth to be able to do it. And
now you've
I'm just
seen
glad
some
to see.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Nah,
I was going to ask if you had. we're stepping over each other a little bit here, but that's cool. You actually have seen some of that. You've reviewed, I think, some of the Samsung high dynamic range sets, right?
Yeah, the JS 9500, their flagship model. I just finished up the JS 8500, the flat screen version. In a sense, you can think of it as the successor to the ultra popular HU 8550 that was out last year. And I've personally calibrated a couple of 9000s too. So I've kind of seen most of the high end for what Samsung's done this year. And I will say that 9500 with its ability to do peak brightness in excess of 900 nits is about more than double what most TVs can do. It really adds a lot to the viewing experience. And high dynamic range is all about being able to show those dark details clearly, with, at least in Samsung's case, very little transition or very little affecting of color, even in dark shades, as well as when there's a light source in a darkened environment too. That light can be blindingly bright, or even in naturally lit scenes like an outdoor scene with sunlight on a character's face. It looks more realistic with that much light being able to jump off the screen the way it is. And it also can enhance your regular content as well, whether or not that's, being faithful to the intent of the director or the cinematographer. That's another argument. But
yeah,
but
I have a hard time with that. But it sure looks good. Yeah,
it does. It really does. And now, if they can do an OLED that can do peak brightness levels in that 800 nits range, that's something, because they can already do perfect black, so, quote unquote, and that is something I really want to see in person, and I'm really looking forward to checking it out.
That's the big question. Can OLED reach those high brightness levels of LCDs? LCDs, it's pretty easy. We've seen those very high brightness levels for years, but of course they didn't have the high dynamic range capability to really show a high dynamic range signal, but they can get bright really easily. My impression has always been that OLEDs don't. They can get to 300-400 nits maybe. I mean, I've seen a couple that have claimed like 800 nits, but I think generally they don't go quite as bright, but they can certainly go super black, as you said, absolute black, truly a zero black. And I wanted to ask you what you thought of, in a related question, that you've looked at the Samsungs. They can really put out a lot of light in the high dynamic range. I've read a number of comments, quite a few, in fact, from people who say, man, I don't want to have to wear sunglasses to watch TV. It's just too damn bright. Did you get that sense at all?
Honestly, it was, but not to the point where I found it offensive or
uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. If anything, it was the ability to do the subtle details more clearly, especially in dark scenes, even side by side with TVs that had less capability, but similar functionality in terms of displaying high dynamic range. That 9500 with that extra bit of light output really captured parts of the scene. It made everything look better. It really did, especially for things that were optimized for high dynamic range. The subtle color in particular was the big one. It was just like, usually when TVs start displaying darker and darker details, sometimes colors don't look quite right. They can shift more in that dark portion, I find, depending on how they were calibrated or how they were set up from the factory. And I just found that in general, the representation of the scene, it still could maintain a good black level, yet for any detail that was on the screen, be it really dark or even peak bright, like say a moon in a star-filled sky, the moon had a little extra kick to it that other TVs just weren't capable of doing. And it is kind of subtle, but at the same point, I want additional light output, period, especially for when the room isn't light controlled. I've been in many places where you're dealing with floor to ceiling windows and the person is watching TV mostly in the middle of the daytime. And it becomes a light battle at that point. And so you want the most light output possible.
Absolutely. No question about it.
That's where when I start to see TVs that can do 800 nits, I'm suddenly like, man, that's going to make just regular daytime viewing even better. And I look forward to seeing more TVs capable of that. Although currently I've run into issues where it becomes a heat management issue. That they become very plasma-like when you start messing around at brightness levels like that, in terms of gating the response based on how much energy is being consumed or what temperatures are being hit in certain parts of the panel. You obviously don't want a part to self-destruct itself or to have an OLED or an LCD cook itself in a small section of the screen. You going for this excessive brightness, because they are capable of good light output now. But like you said too, one of the first things I'll test on one of the new HDR capable OLEDs from LG will be light output with small test windows. That's usually where they want you to test things, like with a 2% white window, to see what that can do in terms of overall light output. Because
that brings up an interesting point too, because I've heard it said that the Samsungs, for example, when you put up a small white window, sure, they can reach 1,000, even 1,100 nits. But if you put up a full white field where the entire screen is covered in white, it's not going to get anywhere near that, because if it did, they would way exceed, the environmental standard power consumption standards, and it would just draw massive amounts of power and get super hot, as you pointed out as well. So, it's not that, if you watch a snow scene, like, for example, Art of Flight, you know that Blu-ray, right? Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Full of snow. Much more than half the screen is like white. And if that were all at 1,000 nits, yeah, maybe it might get kind of uncomfortable, but that's not really what we're talking about here in terms of high dynamic range. We're talking about little things that get that bright, and that isn't that uncomfortable, and it does add greatly to the realism, to the sense of, wow, I really am looking out the window.
It's a good point you bring up, though, about the content itself being optimized. And in the scenes that I found were generally brighter overall, like a daylit scene or something that's not at night, generally speaking, I found that the TVs with full array local dimming versus those that didn't have it but both supported high dynamic range, the differences were less obvious. I was using something on the Spears and Munsell test disc called an equal energy window, or a frame. So basically the center square would be at 100%, but there would be grayscale around the edge so that the overall picture level would be equal. So if I was looking at, say, 50% gray versus 100% gray, the overall picture level is identical. But when I'm looking at that 100% level, specifically just measuring luminance coming off the screen, I found that the TVs were a lot more even across the board. Didn't matter if it was edge lit or full array local dimming lit. When you start talking about a screen that's more generally lit, they generally are a lot more close than most people probably realize. But like I said, too, for any of those scenes where you're in the lower average picture level, or especially like a moonlit night, stars, things like that, that I think is where Samsung TVs look their best, at least that JS 9500. And I imagine when we see the new OLEDs with high dynamic range support out of LG, I picture either an equal or hopefully better viewing experience as well. But I'll reserve judgment until I actually get one in hand and can put it side by side. I'm willing to do this for anybody.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. You and I are taking them for the team, huh?
Oh, so terrible. It's a terrible
It's so
job.
terrible, but it's so much fun. I mean, don't you have such a great time in your job? I know I do.
I do enjoy it. I mean, it's something that's every year that goes by, I'm always thinking, okay, I'm clearly burned out on this. There can't be anything new. Wait, here are 5 more things to go get excited about for what's happening this year or next year. So it keeps me busy.
You know, Beard 57 in the chat room is making a point that I think I saw earlier as well. You were mentioning earlier about wall mounting and how you really like wall mounting and don't put it on a stand. But these curved screens, when you wall mount them, you can wall mount them, but then they kind of stick out on the sides. Is that a problem?
You know what? That is true. And then especially for those screens, I would almost want an articulating mount that can then shift left or right a little bit.
Good point.
I was also at a client's house where they had the TV above a fireplace, but there was an alcove within the space above the fireplace where I think they had artwork hung in front of it. So it turned out that this curved screen actually filled in that space better because
wow.
the middle of the screen actually, kind of went back, but then the edges of it were right up in line with the rest of the framing of the area that it was in. So yeah.
So there you
and
go.
Sometimes
if you put it in an
sometimes you also
alcove,
run
then it might
into
work better.
Sometimes you run into issues though with oddly shaped TVs like that. And I also ran into this with Sony's best TV last year that had a wedge design where you have to use
built-in
extra
speakers
spacers on the back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 100+ pound TV, and I had that wall mounted too. So I was like,
oh man,
for the 65-inch version, they're 900, and I also had the 950 that didn't have the speakers on the sides, but still, yet another 100-pound TV that was just incredibly performance-wise. It was beautiful, but it required some additional spacers that thankfully the manufacturers include with the hardware. So I was using standard wall mount hardware, those TVs too. Yet it just takes a little extra planning and sure is whatever. You need to make sure you're mounting any heavy object properly in terms of hitting your studs and making it nice and safe and secure. Right. But for a lot of TVs do not weigh 100 pounds. Most don't. And it's not nearly as difficult as you think to get a TV up on the wall. And it just becomes a matter of figuring out, what height do you want it? Where do you want it? And things like that. But it's a great way just to reclaim some space and protect your investment. And that's the other reason I like mounting as much as I do. And even furniture. I've had places where I couldn't actually put anything on a wall in terms of where I was living, but there's many furniture options too, where you can have a stand, be it rolling or fixed, or even like electronic cabinetry that has a stand built into it. So there's other options too if you can't actually physically attach stuff to the walls in the current place you're living. So
it's funny you mentioned that not very many TVs these days are even as much as 100 pounds, and you're right. But it reminds me of the days when TVs, if you got a 100-pound TV, that was super light. I mean, these big giant CRTs, you remember those, I'm sure.
Oh no, my 32-inch Sony XBR. Oh, I sold that on Craigslist, and it was still fantastic looking. But
But man, it must have weighed 250, 300 pounds.
And then friends of mine had like the 36-inch version or heavier, where the glass on the front of that must have been like an inch thicker more. Those TVs were a couple 100 pounds easy. So I don't really miss that too much. Now that we have good options available, be it an LCD or OLED, or hopefully we'll see some new interesting technologies too. Yeah, that's the other part. If there's a trade show I want to hit more often, it would be something like SIGGRAPH or one of those types of shows Infocom, where you're looking more into the future of display technologies and what are they experimenting with to produce the next generation of display systems. So
right, exactly. Well, Blue Rules in the chat room is bringing up a subject that I wanted to touch upon with you anyway, which is UHD Blu-ray, Ultra HD Blu-ray, which we've all said we've all heard. Last CES we heard about it, and it's coming by the end of this year. Samsung actually introduced the first commercial product at IFA. I think we have a photo of that. And what's really weird and cool about this is it's got a curved front panel to match their TVs. That's amazing.
Well, just to be fair, the current lineup of their 2015 Blu-ray players, their 1080p Blu-ray players, are curved as well. So
are they? Okay, so that's not a new thing. All right.
Not really, not too much, but the thing I'm most curious about, well, one, that's going to bring in likely not only hopefully some of the best image quality you can get from any source, as Blu-ray did. It still remains one of our finest consumer sources of video quality.
Absolutely.
But also, I want to know what the apps that are built into that in particular. Will those be 4K streaming applications, since that will be a 4K Blu-ray player? Will you be able to do 4K Netflix? Will you be able to do 4K Amazon with HDR? If so,
I can't imagine not. I mean, that would be silly if they didn't do that.
Because that will at least, well, you will still need a TV that's capable of doing it, but any of these TVs that can be upgraded to HDMI 2.0A should be able to at least transcode that, even if it's not a native HDR display, to still be able to provide an HDR-ish viewing experience. And a lot of people too would just like to have, nobody's making, as far as I know, a set-top box other than Sony's streaming 4K player that provides Netflix in 4K. So It's just having a standalone box that you could add to a 4K display you may already own, as long as it supports HDCP 2.2. And I don't know if, HDMI 2.0A is going to be required for the apps, but at least it gives me some hope that, for people who bought in early into the 4K experience, they'll have good options for adding hardware to their existing system to help make it feel fresh and updated,
Right.
I should say.
Yeah, yeah. Blue Rules in the chat room is pointing to an article on Blu-ray.com about the first slate of UHD HDR Blu-rays were announced, and this thing is only dated today, and it's 20th Century Fox, which we already knew was going to be promoting and distributing a high dynamic range content. And this is the first batch of titles. Exodus, of course, which we saw in clips at CES. Kingsman, The Secret Service, Fantastic Four, X-Men, Days of Future Past, Life of Pi, another one we saw clips of for a while, The Maze Runner, and Wild. So, already there's a slate of 4K Ultra HD titles on Ultra HD Blu-ray with high dynamic range capabilities. So, that's going to be coming sooner than later, I think. Somebody else in the chat room asked when will we expect to see that? And it's been said by the end of the year. I think it's more likely to be kind of early next year. We'll see the actual product at CES, and they will say at that time, coming in Q1 or Q2.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of what I expect to see. How about you?
I think the exact same thing. I think it's going to be a nice tech demo. I mean, they did the announcement. We'll probably get a better feel for availability and the initial selection of titles that will be coming down the road. The other thing to remember, too, is that a lot of movies shot today or shot in the last year or so have been using cameras that can record in high dynamic range and expanded color palettes. So there's a whole library of movies that could go back and re-author them for, doing expanded color and expanded high dynamic range. And
as long as they archive them in 4K with that high dynamic range content.
That's going to be, I think we're going to have a flood as soon as that gate's opened. And be it from a streaming source or from a Blu-ray disc, an ultra high definition Blu-ray disc, it'll be good to see more content that takes advantage of this, because UHD by itself was cool and all, but it really was like, okay, I know you guys can do that. You can make higher resolution displays. I want to see more. I want to see more color that I can perceive. I want to see greater range of detail within a particular scene. And these are all things that are finally, coming to fruition now. So bring on these Blu-ray players and get that content rolling. I'm just kind of sitting on my hands, but it's like, I want to
come on already.
But also too, this is also like literally generation 2 maybe of 4K TVs. Yes. And a lot's changed in just from last year to this year. And we're going to see even greater change, I think, going into next year for the 2016 models. In addition, I think pricing for across the board, everything's going to trickle down. So the mid-range sets are going to be experiencing, I think, expanded color and greater detail and ways of making that content look better on TVs that might not natively support things like high dynamic range.
Right. Compter in the chat room is asking, what about price? We don't really know. No one has said anything about that, right? I mean, I haven't heard anything.
As far as Blu-ray players go?
Yeah, players and titles.
I think it's going to be quickly. I mean, the initial it's going to be a premium at first for the first few months, and then boom, as Blu-ray did and as many other formats do, prices will come down. But you'll still have premium products without a doubt. I mean, take a look at like Oppo's Blu-ray players. Those are not inexpensive products, but at the same time, they put a lot of value into it in terms of providing very high quality outputs, a very good amplification built into it. Also, just universal format support. So a great variety of different disc types and build quality. There will always be room for premium products out there too. But I think just having the Blu-ray player in the market, the Ultra HD Blu-ray player, just shows that at least the format's coming around now to actually exposing more of these features that have been touted that the format's capable of. Here's an example product of it. It'll just get more people working with it and becoming familiar with it in terms of production and authoring and distribution of this content. And hopefully this will translate into more and more streaming sources as well as UHD discs as well.
Yeah. Well, a lot more to talk about. Chat room's a buzzing, and I've got a few more things to ask you as well. But before we do, I'd like to take a moment to thank our second sponsor for this episode, which is Epson. This episode, of course, is brought to you by the new Epson Workforce printers powered by Precision Core. Now you can do business better and leave laser printers in the dark. The new Epson Workforce printers use ink, not laser toner, yet they are more efficient. The cost per page is up to half that of a color laser printer. Epson developed a new print chip nozzle they call Precision Core. These nozzles fire nearly 40 million dots per second, precisely delivering the most appropriate amount of ink to achieve high-quality, high-speed printing. You get print shop quality with vibrant colors and clear, crisp text. The high-resolution Epson print chips are one of the fastest inkjet printing technologies in the world. And Workforce printers make mobile device printing easy with workgroup connectivity and incredible dependability you know from Epson. Epson Workforce printers help you cut the costs without compromising quality and keep your business moving forward. There are many reasons to choose Workforce with Precision Core rather than a laser printer. Unlike laser printers, there's no warm-up time. You can print on a wide range of media. They're energy efficient. And Epson has developed the next generation of inkjet performance that's beyond laser. So go to Epson.com today and find out what the new Workforce printers can do for you and your business. That's EPSON.com. Epson, built to perform. And we thank Epson very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Adam A. in the chat room was asking about HDR projectors for home theater, high dynamic range projectors for home theater, which I haven't heard word one about. We now have high dynamic range in some theaters, a few, like 5 in the US. They're called Dolby Cinema. They use a system called Dolby Vision, high dynamic range. There's 2 of them in LA, which I'm really happy about since that's where I live. But you know, there's another one in Kansas City. I think there's one in Dallas or Houston. A couple other places. On avsforum.com, you can look up laser projectors and you'll find my list of where they all are. And but I don't see any sense of that for the home. We might see that maybe at CEDIA this year. I can hope. Robert, are you going to CEDIA?
I haven't planned on it yet, actually. That's another show I love attending. It's a little more condensed and compact and focused on what we cover. Absolutely. Exactly.
But it may be a situation now where, again, the hotels are going to be real expensive and flights as well, because that's only that's a month and a half away. Have you heard anything at all about high dynamic range projectors for the home?
Not for the home. That's strictly, I think, going to be a commercial endeavor for the time being, especially when it comes to being able to produce a very bright image, in addition to having the ability to do as good of contrast that's possible. Granted, you arguably can do better black levels in your home theater with a projection system than you can in most commercial cinemas, especially when you consider they have to adhere to regulations for things like safety lighting and other things within the room environment itself. So there's always going to be a little extra light compared to what you can do in a pitch black, home theater, dedicated home theater room. However, I'm seeing better and better brightness levels being achieved through different technologies now. LED is still, at least in the consumer space for consumer level pricing, is still not as bright as I think it could be. I think that hopefully will ramp up this year. Also, there are also now hybrid laser projectors that use usually a blue laser shining through a yellow phosphor that's mixture of red and green materials to do a quality white light source that gives you not only the longevity, but also quick startup time and hopefully enhanced brightness as well. Because that's really where the projector folks need to tackle it first and foremost, is being able to get the light output as high as possible without sacrificing dark detail. And at the same point, the rest of it's really down to the room design more than anything. Are you able to then, craft a room where the walls aren't reflecting as the light that's coming off the screen, or are you going to be able just to have enough? I don't know. It's a tough call. It's just that there's so many other factors that go into how good a projected image can look. Compared to
true.
When you're looking at a TV screen that's all self-contained, being lit from behind or on the surface, it's just a different beast altogether. But
it is.
I want to say
Epson,
though, wasn't
sorry, go ahead.
Wasn't Dolby Vision's test system, I want to say, it was a rear projection laser system that could do up to 20,000 nits. And
Yes.
that was just to say, okay, sky's the limit. What do we need to make this really look incredible? Okay,
Yeah,
can we do that with
they used
half
that
the
system
brightness
with a bunch of people they brought in and showed them content on. They used a digital cinema projector, a big giant projector, firing onto like a 24-inch screen to illuminate it, and it was. You're right. They got up to like 20,000 nits, and they said but brought a bunch of people in, just regular people, and said, okay, look at this, and we're going to change the brightness. Tell us when you become uncomfortable or whatever. They tended to like up to 10,000 nits, which virtually nothing can do today. But they just wanted to give us enough headroom, as you said, so that we could grow into it over the next decade, really.
10,000 nits. I mean, that literally is squinting level when you're looking at a screen that's dumping off that much light. So, when you're in a pitch black environment, that's one viewing scenario, and that's where I think the theaters you're enjoying, like El Capitan
in Hollywood, and the Burbank 16, AMC Burbank 16.
I want to say they're using dual laser projection systems to achieve the brightness level. And
that's correct.
Those are $250,000 to $500,000 projectors.
Yes.
And that is a good reason, I think, to go. I'm not a person who goes to the movies on a regular basis. I'm usually dealing with home theater setups and things like that and enjoying the experience there. But if there is a reason for me to get back into the theaters, one, it's the audio representation and the quality. It's leaps and bounds over where it used to be. But also being able to experience a theater like that in person, where you have just the state of the art in terms of not only laser, but high brightness and high dynamic range video, and being able to just immerse yourself in that viewing experience. That gets me back into the theater, and with the appropriate content, of course, but still.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for me, in a way, it gets me back into the theater regardless of the content, because I'm going to study the high dynamic range. And you know what I found, which I thought was really interesting? I've now seen 4 movies in Dolby Vision, in a Dolby Vision cinema, and they did not all perform the same. I saw, which is very interesting. I saw Tomorrowland, which was the first one, Inside Out, Pixels, and Mission Impossible, the last one, Rogue Nation. And Tomorrowland, the blacks looked very deep, very nice. They looked even better in Pixels, this movie that is otherwise, not what I would call a great movie. But I had to go see it to study it, and the blacks were just jaw-dropping in a commercial cinema. Normally, last time you were at a commercial cinema, you probably saw a black interstitial scene or a screen or something like that, and you kind of go, yeah, that's kind of dark gray. But this was black, true black, and it was amazing. And yet on Mission Impossible and on Inside Out, which is animated, and you would expect them to be able to go really black, they didn't. It was kind of like, where's the big difference between this and a regular cinema? Now, it was a little deeper. The brights were brighter. That's true. But it wasn't that jaw-dropping experience that Pixels and Tomorrowland were much more jaw-dropping in that regard. So I think people are still kind of finding their way. The people who make. Do you
think it had anything to do with the theater calibration itself? Were you able to see this at the same theater in the same theater specifically? And then, if so, do you think it had anything to do with how the content was authored? Maybe.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that the people who are making the movies are just getting used to authoring in high dynamic range, and maybe one place to another they are approaching it slightly differently. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the early days of multi-channel music. You remember when the Eagles came out with a 5.1 mix of their last concert tour, and you had this cowbell jangling at you from the right surround speaker, and they were just people, the mixers, the audio engineers were just coming to sort of figure out what to do. And now you listen to more recently mixed multi-channel music, and it sounds great. It's really beautifully integrated, and it forms this wonderful surround field. And now Atmos with speakers overhead. I've heard some music mixes in that are just phenomenal.
Oh, I was just getting used to Blu-ray audio discs, and they're unfortunately quite expensive still, but
yeah,
they pushed the limit of format. I mean, 26, 27 megabit per second audio, or compressed losslessly using one of the popular formats, and that sounds fantastic. And I've yet to experience an Atmos or similar 3D audio experience with music, and that would be I have to put that on my list of.
Yes. Do you have the Dolby Atmos demo disc?
I do not. That's something else.
Oh, I have to get you one. I'll have to get you one.
Please.
Because it has on it, among other things, a music video by Iglesias.
Julio?
Not Julio. Roberto? I forget. His son, I think. Anyway, which is mixed in Atmos. And it's Bailando, I think is what it's called. And it's really good. If you have an Atmos system, I don't know if you have an Atmos system in your house or not.
I do not, unfortunately.
No. Okay, well,
I currently have my home theater packed up in storage at the moment. I'm going to have to bust that out here soon. So.
Oh, man.
I know.
You're going to have to.
Dealing with TV speakers at the moment.
Enrique Iglesias. That Beatmaster got it right. That's who it is. Well, anyway, that's just by way of talking about high dynamic range in commercial cinema. Go to avsforum.com, look up my piece on laser projectors, laser illuminated projectors around the world, and you'll see a list of where, as far as I know, all the ones I know about are, including the Dolby Cinema ones, which are the only ones with true high dynamic range, the IMAX laser projectors, which we have one in LA too. I'm so happy to live in LA for this reason anyway. And then there are other laser projector theaters around the world that you can find on that list. And if you live near any of them, I definitely recommend going to check it out, because laser projectors are one reason to go back out to the movies. I know a lot of people don't like to go, and you're among them. You haven't been out in a long time. Many people's home theaters are better than what they experience in the commercial cinema, but there are a few places where it's really something special. I wanted to ask you quickly, we were talking about projectors, and there was a projector that you're actually looking at now that I wanted to make sure we talked a moment or two about, from LG. Now, LG is known for, OLED, obviously, and LCD TVs. And they've made a projector or two along the line, but here's another one. Tell us about it.
Yeah. It's the
Look at that!
PF-1500. Yeah, this little guy. It's so cute. The thing that caught my attention about this particular projector, one, it was new, but it also features RGB LED illumination. So it starts up quick.
Which I really like.
Yeah. It's a single chip projector, so there may be related issues as far as color breakup goes, but that's kind of beyond it. But the other thing too, this thing has a laundry list of smart features built into it, including support. It comes with one of their magic remotes, a suite of apps, as well as an ATSC tuner built into it.
It's got a tuner. It's a projector with a tuner. Wow. Don't think I've seen that before. 2
HDMI ports. Exactly. There's a lot of cool tech in this projector, and it has just enough light output, I think, to be usable from a lot of people, especially if you have a dedicated room or you're willing to use it when the lights are low. And this is something I'm really looking forward to putting it through its pace. And other than that, it's that LED color quality too. I'm curious to see how the saturation levels are. How well it'll do contrast as well. Because it's LEDs are able to turn on and off very quickly. You should be able to get good black level performance out of something like this as well. But also just having it as far as a built-in ATSC tuner for impromptu backyard use, or something like apps built in for streaming your favorite content that way. Those are a couple things I just haven't seen in projectors yet, and it's something I'm really looking forward to. So
you know what the price point is?
I want to say it's under $1,000 here. I can
under $1,000.
PF1500. Currently priced at $950. So it's not terribly expensive, and it's not going to be the brightest thing out there, but LED technology, that means you're not dealing with lamp changes on a regular basis. You may never for the whole time you own the projector ever have to deal with that.
Probably tens of thousands of hours. Yeah,
exactly. That, and also being fairly robust too. Good shock ability or ability to take a good shock compared to say a fragile lamp module or something like that. But
SoCal Ray Jr. in the chat room is saying, "Can you get Robert to send me that? I want to measure it." He's a calibrator here in LA. I will be very interested to learn what your calibration results are on that thing, because that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just they really just the spec list caught my attention right off the bat, and the fact that it has LED illumination. That's another thing I think is appealing for
I really like LED illumination. Yeah, I really like it. I like not having to change lamps. I like the instant on off. The fact you can modulate them very easily and fully. Lot to recommend them. I haven't had one in my theater yet, but I'd like to very much. So I'm going to check that one or something else out. Oh, there's a picture of it from LG. Showing you the projector next to a reel of film.
It was something else I previewed too at CES last year, and they had a room full of projectors and speakers, and they had some very small projectors too. If you just need something that's like hand size or fist size projectors that you could use.
What's called a Pico projector.
Exactly, but this one hit the right points with me. It was like, okay, it's 1080p. It's got enough light output to be useful. And in some environments, you're not going to be using this with ambient light levels above a certain point, but still, I'm really looking forward to that. Apps and a tuner. I'm done.
Apps and a tuner, yeah. By the way, that you mentioned that it's 1080p, and that's another thing about projectors. Like, for example, there are no high dynamic range projectors other than Sony, which makes 4K, true 4K projectors. That is 4096 by 2160. There are no 4K projectors in the home market. Epson has their laser hybrid, which I was going to mention, which is what we call faux K, F-A-U-X, which is 1080p. The pixels are kind of jiggling around. And JVC has the same thing. And that's another thing I'm hoping for at CEDIA is some true 4K projectors or UHD projectors from other than Sony. Sony's are great, don't get me wrong. But obviously, competition is always a good thing.
Without a doubt. Sony actually makes some of my absolute favorite projectors just for the calibration factor. They tend to tune up really well. And their latest 4K projector. I mean, the model that was out a year or two ago started at 25,000 and migrated down a little bit. Their latest 4K projector starts at about 10 grand right when it first came out. And I think they dropped the price to 8 for a little while there. That's still a lot of money, but
that's still a lot of money, but it's coming down.
A third of what it was. So you can kind of project out into the future of where that's going to go. But still, yeah, you're right. No high dynamic range yet, but really superb image quality. Although I just did a projector calibration for a client, and this particular Sony projector, the only way to modify its gamma response was using a serial cable and like a Windows app. What? And it was really odd. And I really hope that they're doing not only it should require IP control if I need to do this at all, but there should be gamma controls built into the regular picture controls. I shouldn't need a separate app to have to hard program a display system like that. But
man,
it was unique. I'll give it that.
But not necessarily in a good way.
Not necessarily. And I was like, well, I'm thankful I have this USB to serial adapter laying around. I've
happened to have it laying around, yeah.
For JVC firmware updates, I used to have to do that a lot too for their projectors. They required a serial connection. Why? Why do they do this? I don't know. There's a perfectly good Ethernet jack on there. Let's just make everything IP controllable, IP firmware update, check automatically. Anyway, I do love projectors.
I do too. No question about it. Well, listen, we run out of time and we didn't even get to home theater PCs. So will you come back and talk about home theater PCs with us?
Anytime. There's some really cool stuff happening in that space for anyone who wants to either get rid of cable service or just get rid of the hardware that's associated with it and have your own that you actually can do what you want with and use it the way you want. So
fantastic. Yeah, I would love to let's have you back and do a part two and focus on home theater PCs, because that's an area that I'm not as familiar with as I am with some other things. So I will learn greatly from you, and we appreciate that very much.
Cool. And hopefully I'll have a new kit from Intel here soon that highlights some of their latest technologies. I'm shooting for maybe a fanless home theater PC design here in the next couple of months. So we'll see with superb performance. So can't sacrifice.
Let's get you back and talk about that. That sounds fascinating. Thank you. That's Robert Heron. His website is heronfidelity.com, and I definitely encourage you to go check that out because he posts all kinds of very interesting stuff. Robert, thanks so much.
Scott, it's always a pleasure.
As it is for me and our audience. You can find me, of course, at avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott and at avsforum. And you can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here on twit.tv/htg and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be David Abrams, a very renowned video calibrator, to talk about calibration in the age of Ultra HD and high dynamic range. So that should be very interesting. Dave's a great guy, and I look forward to having him here, and I look forward to having you join us. Until then, geek out.